Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Washington Redskins at the Philadelphia Eagles in their Week 16 matchup played December 26, 2015. And these two NFC East division rivals were going at it with the division title on the line. If the Redskins won, they would be the champions. And the Eagles needed to win out. They needed to win this game and then win against the Giants in Week 17 to take the division. Of course, the Redskins would be facing the Cowboys in Week 17, but if they could win this game, they would lock up the division. The Eagles would get the ball first, and we're going to go over every possession, and of course, the stats, and give our breakdown and analysis as always. But the Eagles got the ball first. They started with it on their own 20 after the touchback on the kickoff. And they didn't waste too much time getting downfield and into Washington territory. And on 1st and 5 from the 24, after a penalty, they ended up with another penalty, and that was a pass interference, which made it 1st and goal on the 1. And Ryan Matthews would punch it in from a yard out for the touchdown. Caleb Sturgis added the extra point, and the Eagles were on the board first with the score Philadelphia 7, Washington 0. So now the Redskins would get the ball, and on their first possession of this game, they would be held to a 3-and-out, and they would punt to the Eagles. The Eagles would end up punting after 5 plays, and now the Redskins would take back over for the second time in this game, this time on their own 31, and they would end up getting into Philadelphia territory when Cousins hooked up with Jordan Reed with a 28-yard reception on a 1st and 15 from the 39 to make it a 1st and 10 at the Philadelphia 33. Then on 1st and 10 from the 22, Kirk Cousins went back to Jordan Reed, this time a 22-yard touchdown. And there was actually a penalty against the Eagles and against the Redskins, but they were offsetting, and so the touchdown stood, and Dustin Hopkins added the extra point, but it was no good, and so he did not add the extra point, and it would remain a 1-point game with the score Philadelphia 7, Washington 6. So the Redskins don't get the extra point there, and the Eagles keep the lead for the moment. They would be held to a 3-and-out on the possession that followed, and they would punt the ball back to the Redskins, who would now take over with a little less than 5 minutes left in the first quarter. They had it on their own 39. Cousins went to Deshaun Jackson. He picked up 15 yards to the first down at the Philadelphia 46. Then on a 3rd and 5 from the 31, Cousins went to Jordan Reed. He picked up 19 and a first down in the red zone at the Philadelphia 12, and Kirk Cousins hooked up with Jordan Reed for their second touchdown connection of this game. This one, the 12-yard touchdown, and Hopkins gets the extra point this time to make it a 6-point lead for the Redskins with the score Washington 13, Philadelphia 7, with about a minute left in the first quarter. The Eagles would bring the first quarter to a close, and they would open up the second, and they would have to punt the ball as they only had it for about 6 plays on this possession. So they would punt to the Redskins. The Redskins would go 3-and-out, and then the Eagles would go 3-and-out, and now the Redskins would punt after 4 plays, and then Philadelphia would take over on their own 42, and they would get down into field goal range. They actually got into the red zone all the way down to the 16, but that's where their drive stalled, and Caleb Sturgis would hit a 34-yard field goal, and that would make the score Washington 13, Philadelphia 10, as the Eagles got to within 3 points with 6 minutes left before halftime. The Redskins would then be held to a 3-and-out on their next possession, and after the punt, the Eagles would take over on their own 38, and this is when they had a fumble, the first fumble of the game, the first fumble of many. Bradford would fumble the ball, and it was recovered by Goldston. Breland forced the fumble, and so now Washington would take over on the Philadelphia 35. They got down into the red zone, down to the 10-yard line, but their drive stalled there, and Dustin Hopkins hit a 28-yard field goal to push it back to a 6-point lead for the Redskins with the score Washington 16, Philadelphia 10 with less than 2 minutes left before halftime. The Eagles would end up punting after 6 plays, and the Redskins would get the ball back before halftime, and they got all the way down to the 6-yard line, but instead of spiking the ball, Kirk Cousins ended up taking a knee, so he doesn't spike the ball. And actually a funny headline I saw was, "You spiked that?" Which, you know how he had his thing earlier in the season where he was saying, "You like that? You like that?" After the game was, he's had some pretty big games, but here he just kind of made a mental error, and he need the ball, and instead of getting 3 points right before halftime, as they're right there in the red zone, they could have even possibly got a touchdown. Instead, they come away with nothing right there, and it remains 16-10 at halftime. Washington would get the ball first in the second half, and they would end up punting after 5 plays. The Eagles would punt on their first possession of the second half as well after 4 plays. And now Washington would take over with about 11 minutes left in the third. They had the ball on their own 46. Good field position right there at midfield. And they got down into Philly territory. They got into the red zone. And on 3rd and 6 from the 12, Kirk Cousins hit Chris Thompson for the 12-yard touchdown. Dustin Hopkins added the extra point, and it was now 23-10 as the Redskins pushed their lead to 13, their biggest lead of the game at this point. So now Philadelphia would take over after a nice return on the kickoff by Huff as he brought out to the 48 actually, a 49-yard return. And on first down, Bradford went to Murray. Murray picked up 13, and now it was a first down in Washington territory at the 39. And a couple plays later, Bradford went to Ertz. He picked up 16 yards and a first down in the red zone at the 11. And they would get down to the 4-yard line, a 3rd and 3. And DeMarco Murray scores on a 4-yard touchdown run. Sturgis added the extra point, and it was back to a 6-point game with the score of Washington 23, Philadelphia 17, with 5 minutes still left in the third. So the Eagles making it a 6-point game. And the Redskins would be held to a 3-and-out on their next possession. So now Philadelphia would take over. And this was just less than a minute after they had scored that touchdown. They had it on their own 21 after the punt. Then on 3rd and 2 from the 29, they ended up with another fumble. This time, Bradford going to try to kind of toss it over to DeMarco Murray, but they did not connect on the transfer, and instead DeAngelo Hall scoops up the ball, and he runs it into the end zone, 17 yards on the fumble recovery for the touchdown. Hopkins adds the extra point, and it was now 30-17 as the Redskins again up by 13 points. And that was with about 3.5 minutes still left in the third quarter. So the Eagles would get the ball, and they would end up punting after 6 plays on their next possession. And now the Redskins would take over on their own 18-yard line. Then on 2nd and 7 from the 21, Cousins goes to Grant. He picks up 24 and a first down at the Washington 45. And then Morris with a 2-yard run would bring the third quarter to a close as the score was 30-17 entering the fourth. And the Redskins with the ball driving. They got into Philadelphia territory. They got all the way down to the 7-yard line, but a false start would push them back to the 12. And they lost a yard, and an incomplete pass brought up 3rd down, 3rd and goal from the 13. And Kirk Cousins hits Pierre Garcon in the end zone for a 13-yard touchdown. And then they went for 2, and Kirk Cousins hits Crowder, and the 2-point conversion is successful. And now the Redskins were up by 21 points with the score of Washington 38, Philadelphia 17, with less than 9 minutes left to play in this game. So now the Eagles would be down by 3 scores, and they started going to work. Of course, it was garbage time really at this point, as this game was pretty much all but over. Really, that defensive touchdown kind of really put momentum on its side, really flipped things over in the Redskins' favor. They went up by 2 scores, but now up by 3 scores. But the Eagles would end up putting together a drive, and they got down all the way to the 8-yard line. And on 3rd and 7, Sam Bradford hit Jordan Matthews for an 8-yard touchdown. Sturgis added the extra point, and it was now 38-24 with about 4.5 minutes left to play. The Redskins would go 3-and-out on their next possession, and now the Eagles down by 2 scores, down by 14 points. They would have the ball on their own 20. They got up to midfield, and they would bring the game to the 2-minute warning in Washington territory. But Bradford ended up going to Barner. He lost 7 yards, and that brought it to the 2-minute warning. Then coming out of the 2-minute warning, he went to Matthews. He picked up 12, but it was 3rd and 5. They have another fumble, but Kelsey, the lineman, recovers it, and he wouldn't gain any yards. He got back to the line of scrimmage. That brought up 4th down, and an incomplete pass turned the ball over on downs, and now the Redskins would take over, and all that was left to do was for Kirk Cousins to take 3 knees in the victory formation as the Redskins win this one 38-24, and they take the NFC East division title. Captain Kirk Cousins, and they're now 8-7 on the season, 2-5 on the road. They'll be finishing up in Dallas, and the Eagles now fall to 6-9 on the season. They're 3-5 on the year at home. In front of the fans, they're in Philadelphia, and they are now eliminated from the playoffs. So the Redskins are going to be hosting a game in Wild Card Weekend, and from the looks of it, at least if the season were to end today, they would be hosting the Vikings. But the Falcons still have an outside shot. Of course, they need to win out, and the Vikings need to lose out for that to happen. If the Vikings win or tie, they're in. Or if the Falcons lose or tie, then the Vikings are in, and the Falcons would be eliminated. And that would be, of course, you still have to see, with the Seattle Seahawks and the Vikings at the moment, both have the same record, so it's not a sure thing either. Also, the Vikings have a chance to take their division, so the Packers could end up as a wild card team, and also the Seahawks have a chance still to take their division, so the Cardinals could end up as a wild card team. So it's still not a sure thing of who the Redskins will be facing in that wild card round, but they will be hosting a game. And of course, the Redskins are a much better team at home, but they get a big road win here in Philadelphia. Of course, Deshaun Jackson, the former Eagle, and he would address that after the game. But Kirk Cousins, a huge performance in this game, 4 touchdowns, and of course his main targets were, at least for the most part, seemed to be Pierre Garcon and Pierre Thomas. So it was the adventures of Pierre and Pierre. Kirk Cousins just unloading the cannon. It was like Pierre. But Kirk Cousins in this game, 31 for 46, 365 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Alfred Morris, 17 carries for 49 yards. Pierre Thomas had 4 carries for 22 rushing yards. He also had 7 catches for 67 receiving yards, giving him 89 total yards in the game. Jordan Reed had 9 catches for 129 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Pierre Garcon had 7 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. And Deshaun Jackson had 4 catches for 40 yards. Of course, Thompson had the 1 catch for that 12-yard touchdown. And that was the 4 touchdowns for Cousins. Sam Bradford was 37 for 56, 380 passing yards, 1 touchdown. DeMarco Murray had 5 carries for 27 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 24 yards, and that would give him a total of 52 yards in this game. Actually, 51 yards. Zach Ertz had 13 catches for 122 yards, and Jordan Matthews had 6 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown. Darren Sproles had 5 carries for just 9 yards. He had 7 catches for 56 yards, which gave him 65 total yards in this game. And Ryan Matthews, 4 carries for just 5 yards. He did have that rushing touchdown. He also had 2 catches for 13 yards, giving him just 18 total yards in the game. And Nelson Aguilar, 2 catches for 35 receiving yards. The kickers in this game, Dustin Hopkins, 1 for 1 on the field goals, 3 for 4 on the extra points. Caleb Sturgis, 1 for 1 on the field goals, 3 for 3 on the extra points. And on defense in this game, Preston Smith, 3 sacks for the Redskins. He also had a forced fumble as well. Breland also had a forced fumble. DeAngelo Hall had that fumble recovery for the touchdown. Will Compton had a sack, and Ricky Jean-Francois had a sack as well. And for Philadelphia, Fletcher Cox had 2 sacks in this game. And then we look at the team stats, 25 first downs for the Redskins, 23 first downs for the Eagles. On third down, Philadelphia 7-19, 36%. They went for it 3 times. On fourth down, they converted 2 for 66%. And for Washington, they were 5 of 14 on third down, 35%. Total net yards, 418 for the Redskins, 398 for the Eagles. On the ground, Washington netted 67 yards, Philadelphia 45. Through the air, Philadelphia netted 354 as Bradford was sacked 5 times, losing 27 total yards, and the Redskins netted 351 as Cousins was sacked twice, losing 14 total yards. Penalties in this game, both teams penalized 8 times, 70 penalty yards for Washington, 45 penalty yards for Philadelphia, 7 fumbles for the Eagles. They recovered 5 of those fumbles. They lost 2. 1 fumble for Washington, which they recovered themselves. In the red zone in this game, Washington was 3 for 5, 60%. Philadelphia 3 for 4, 75%. In the time of possession, 34 minutes, 4 seconds for Washington, 25 minutes, 56 seconds for Philadelphia. This thing, the Eagles came out, they scored that first touchdown to take the early lead. Of course, Washington, that missed extra point failed to tie the game, but they would take the lead in the first quarter right there with a minute left as Jordan Reed got his second touchdown from Kirk Cousins, and they never looked back really from that point. They never trailed after that point once they took the lead there with a minute left in the first quarter. So they were in control for the most part in this game. And, it was close still at halftime, and you kind of wondered what was going to happen after that blunder right before halftime where Cousins took the knee and they failed to come away with at least 3 points right there. But it wouldn't matter. And it really, Cousins had a spectacular game once it was all said and done. The 4 passing touchdowns, 365 passing yards, his 7th 300-plus passing yard game of the season. He already had the record for the most 300-yard passing games, but he extends that record, and he's writing history in the franchise of one of the most storied franchises that now wins its 600th franchise game. And only 4 teams have more victories than the Redskins, and that would be the Bears first, then the Packers, and then the Giants and the Steelers. So they're right up there as one of the most storied franchises in NFL history. Of course, going back to the playoffs, the first title in the division since 2012. And Washington, they were playing a good game. The Eagles were putting pressure on Cousins, and they were shutting down the run, doing a pretty good job shutting down the run. Both teams were doing good on run defense, but Kirk Cousins stepping up big time in this game, making the throws under pressure, making the plays. And, of course, his favorite target, Pierre Garcon, and Jordan Reed, of course, having a spectacular year as well. And Pierre Garcon, one of the most targeted receivers in the NFL. He's one of the most reliable. That's the guy that he really counts on, especially on those third down situations. And times when he's under pressure, he goes for Pierre Garcon. And he steps up, he comes up big time. Of course, he had that nice touchdown catch. And also the defense stepping up big time too, as they were putting the pressure on. 5 sacks, and they scored that touchdown. So the Redskins looking really good, and they play really good at home, and they're going to be hosting the playoff game. Of course, this one on the road, which is a good win for them, a good thing, for their momentum going towards that postseason, to know that they can win big games on the road, but also that they're going to be hosting a home playoff game is a big thing for the Redskins. That you never know what the Redskins could do once they get into the postseason. The way that their offense is, playing, especially with Cousins when he's on fire. I mean, he gets it done. He gets them in the end zone, as he continues to do, and he did that tonight in prime time. A big victory for Washington. Like I said, the defense stepping up too. With the Eagles, it was really, they added that late touchdown, and really even the touchdown by Murray. It was, they were already down by 2 scores at that point. It did make it back to a 6-point game, but then 2 more touchdowns by the Redskins there. Of course, the defensive touchdown. Then, of course, as I said, the one to Garcon with the 2-point conversion. That really put the nails in the coffin. Then the Eagles got that late touchdown there, Jordan Matthews. But at that point, the game was pretty well in hand. Of course, they went for that onside kick and everything. That Pierre Garcon even recovered that one, as he has got some of the best hands in football. So it was a big win for the Redskins. And of course, they lost to Dallas earlier in the year. Now they're going to be going to Dallas to finish off the season. And if they can get that win, then they finish above 500. And who would have thought that the winner in the East actually had a chance to be above 500? You thought that maybe it would be 500 at best. But the Washington Redskins, they're red hot right now. And if they can continue to win and build on that momentum and go into the playoffs, maybe they actually win a playoff game, and then we'll see what happens from there. You never know. Anything can happen in football, but let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've been having a great week and a happy holidays and enjoying all the sports.